right here we have some contour hand drawings that I'm going to show you to do, but first I want to cover the parts of your hand. So when looking at your hand, think of the basic shapes that your hand has, and I'm going to just draw on my hand so you can see them. So if we look here at this part of my hand, we would have a square. Some people it's more of a rectangle. And then if we look at this part, they are also long rectangles, or some people like to call them cylinders. So they're going to go all the way out here. And I'm just drawing on my hand so you can see where they will be hitting when we start looking at the fingernail placement, our knuckle placement, which is also the joints. And then I'm going to cover those in a different color. So if we look at this set of knuckles right here, they all line up, but they're slightly arched just a little bit. But if we look at the main knuckle of our thumb that connects to the palm part of our hand, it does not align right up here. It actually aligns further back on the palm, right down here is the two joints for your thumb. And then we have another set, and I'll do those in a different color. These knuckles right here, I'm doing them in purple so you can see them. And then you can see how they have kind of like a stair step, and then on some people's this may be straight across, or it may be a little bit lower or higher. And then we have this set right here, and those are a steeper set, and then down lower, and then I'll get this one, and there is this one down here. Because you do have something that joins right here, so that's actually this set. So when looking at our hands, we want to make sure we're seeing where those are stair stepping. So I just did this so you can see them while I'm drawing my hand. What I'm also going to do is on this side, do the square or rectangle that makes up your palm. Then you had those rectangle or cylinder shapes for your fingers. I'll do it on the thumb here. And the thumb does lay a little bit different than our fingers. As you know, it lays more angled when we're looking at it this way. So we have to remember that when we draw it, because some people seem to turn it over and then they're like, why does my drawing look wrong? And it's usually because the thumb is placed either in the wrong position, because a lot of people like it up here, or they haven't turned it to its side. So here was the main knuckles, so I'm going to go through here again so you can see them. And then the others I happen to do in purple, so I'm just going to follow them here. And then on this right here. And to see that of the placement of the hand, there would be the peace sign this way. So now this would help me see when drawing it where those are going to line up. Also, how does this connect in this spot? So looking at here, you can see where this was the square part of the hand. Then we had the main knuckles. And then we went back with the purple and did the knuckles, and then the other set. So when looking at your hand, try and sketch in roughly the size of the palm. Think of it as a shape. And then you could do the placement of how tall your fingers are on your flat surface that you're on, or the air. Are they stair stepping? Are they right up against each other? So that's something to look at. And pay attention to, you know, the fingertips and the shape of your fingernails too. So on the fingernails, some of us have a very short bed of a fingernail where it's more curved. Some have a longer rectangle one. Some may have pointier or curved fingernails and more square shape throughout things. So everybody's fingernails are a little bit different, so you need to pay attention to when you're doing those. So let's move on to looking at our hand to draw on, and I'll just do a couple of hands so you can see how to do everything. And I'm just going to use a Sharpie and not erase things. So a contour line drawing is just the outer edges and the fine details. I'm not going to sit there and shade everything like you would when we get to the shading unit. Right now we're just looking at our hand to draw. One other thing is look at the placement of where your wrist is connected also. A lot of people end up giving like a little tiny wrist like that, and that is not how your wrist goes. So placement of the thumb does not come out of this set. So this is what throws people off. So when you draw your little square or rectangle for the palm, remember it comes out at the bottom of this spot. It doesn't come out where it's connecting to the rest of our fingers. And it's like we know it, we know where it is, but then when we start drawing, we just seem to forget sometimes. So that's why looking at the object is very important, and that goes along with the contour line drawing. So if I have my hand here in resting position, I could draw in with a rough sketch this rectangle right here that I'm looking at, or square body, for a palm of my hand. And I'm just doing rough shapes. So then I could do a light guideline of also how much of my fingers equal the size of my palm. So what I'm going to do as a reference is just take fingers, or you could hold whatever you're drawing with, be like, okay, here's the tip of it, here's the end, and is it the same length as, say, my middle finger could be my guideline. And it is for my hand. Some people may have longer fingers or shorter. We're all built just a little bit different. So I'm going to be like, okay, here's this, so I know there could be a guideline that I'm just going to put up here. So now I know. One thing you could also do is some people like sketching things out where they would go in single lines, and I'm doing this a little bit lighter, and we would see this is going to stair step down even lower. So I'm going to pay attention to those arches when I start drawing things in. Remember, thumb is not up here, thumb is down this way. Some people like sketching things in with your rectangles or your cylinder shapes, and that's fine also. But what I like doing is making this part as a rough sketch, then seeing where this stair step would be, and you can put it in like this, then see where the next one is, and it goes up a little bit higher, and then it comes back down to here. So that would help a person see where those things go. What I could also do is say, where is the thumb lining up? If I just would do this, this makes a triangle. So if I would be from here to, it was this knuckle, and look at the angle that it's making, and just giving myself some guidelines, it looks like the thumb is going to go out this far. So then what I would start doing is looking at my shapes and start doing a light rough sketch. And one other thing people do for their fingers when it connects the hand is a V. It does have more of a curve, so look at that. And these would just be your rough sketches. And by using a pencil, you can then have cleaner lines. I'm just doing this in Sharpie so it shows up for you. And I would be sketching all these in with the curve, and then it's going to go back up, and then back down, and then thumb. And notice how mine curves out. Everybody has a little bit different way their thumb goes. So I'm seeing the side part of the thumb here, and then part of the fingernail. So I'm just drawing the rough shape of everything in. So this would be the start of, yes, I said it, the dreaded hand turkey for all art teachers. So remember in elementary school, you traced your hand. You were starting a contour line drawing. You just were not doing it. You were implying that there's a hand there by just the outline shape. So a contour is actual all nice details to where you make it look realistic. So if this was a pencil, I would erase all of this stuff now, and then go into putting the fingernails in, placement of it, and I'm still doing a rough sketch. Some people draw a little bit hard, so by doing a light rough sketch and going in with nicer pencil lines later, that's what makes a really nice picture. And I'm just going to do some lines for this. So we have some lines for where my knuckles would be. And then also make the lines for where you see your knuckles. You may see a few like veins in your hands, and that's okay. So one thing we don't do is leave a chopped off hand. We need to draw our wrist. Our wrist is attached. So what we would do is just continue it lightly and then fade it out. I do have my joint bone right there that I'm going to put in. So I'd have this kind of inwards line, and then it would be going out like this. So that is how you would end drawing a hand. Don't just go straight across, because you just cut your hand off again. So what I would do next is, this would be a pencil. As I get going better and better, then I can just start freehanding it. So I'll do that one right now. And for hand drawing, you just need to keep practicing different poses. One thing to look at is sign language. So like you could do the letter T, which is also I got your nose. You could do the peace sign. The letter A is also this. So there's different ways that you can do the study of your hands. But if I would have one like this, it's still stair-stepping downwards. And then I could see where my thumb is placed. So if I was to draw my hand like this, I'm gonna start here and follow the line and make guidelines as I go down, or you could kind of sketch in the shape. It's your preference. Once you get comfortable drawing, you don't always need to do a rough sketch. So I can see I have, and I didn't color it that well, there is that knuckle that comes over in this area. And when you guys are doing this, don't be drawing on your hands so you don't get in trouble. And I am definitely gonna have to use lots of soap to get these off later. So then I'm looking at basic shapes. That's one of those right brain, left brain things that also confuses people. So our left brain is the thing that wants to label everything all the time. This is a fingernail. This is da 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 da. When our right brain looks at things a little bit easier, we see things as basic shapes using our right brain. And that makes it easier to do studies of things, is because we're seeing basic shapes. Also, our knuckles are not perfectly square. We do have angles, so pay attention to the angles that you see on them. And this one has where it comes down for that back part of the finger, but then it also then comes over. And when we learn how to shade, it will also make the fingernails look more realistic than just like, oh, well, that's just a simple line drawing. If your fingers are squished into the palm part of your hand, draw that also. And I'll be putting some lines right here. So I have this fingernail here. And I'm looking at where this knuckle line is. Again, it's right here. And this one's coming up, because they are stair-stepping downwards compared to here. So it's not straight across, it's stair-stepping down. And then I can see a part back there. And then this ring finger's underneath here just a little bit. And the more you do of these, the better you get. So look at other objects that you have around you. Everything has lines in it when you're drawing them, so think of them as your basic shapes when you are drawing everything. Shoes, they're just gigantic rectangles. Your chair that you could be sitting on, it could be made of circles. It can be made of squares. So if you're always just like, well, I can't draw that, look at things in the basic shape form. Even our faces, when we get to those, that is a gigantic oval. And then look at the shapes that are smaller and smaller, and then you'll find it easier to draw things. So as I'm looking at my hand right now, I'm not thinking, oh, the pinky right here. I'm just like, okay, this line's going up, slanted, this has a little bit of a curve to it. I'm seeing the curve here. There's a curve in between here and here that's going downwards. Then there's one coming out. And it's our left brain is what's telling us that we need to label. So our right brain, just think of them as shapes, and it makes it a lot easier to see. And now, just because I'm demonstrating, go back to the wrist, which is labeling things like the left brain. This way you don't forget, or it's like, what is this a random cut off hand for? And then a lot of people get fixated on all these lines. People call them your lifelines. Those you don't need to draw every one. Just draw ones that are getting emphasized more when you are looking at everything. And then go back and touch things up. Also, don't move your hand just like I did, because I had lost the placement of where a few of my lines were. And then you can go back in, which is hard to see right now because I have color all over them, but put some more of those lines that would be showing where your knuckles are. And a couple more up through here. And if you have a watch or jewelry on, you could draw those things also. Here are a few line contour drawings of shoes that I started. So when looking at the shoe, we want to make sure that we're looking at the shoestring as it has two sides. The little eyelets, they may just be a cloth ones, or it may just be metal depending on the type of shoe. And you may have a lot more stitches and details and stuff, but we're going to look at the simple lines and the big shapes first. And then we'll work on putting the stitches and then the details of the laces in later. But we want to work on the basic shapes of the blind contour first. So a few things to note is when doing shoes, some people go towards a simple shoe like that or just like that. And there's no way our foot would fit into that, especially since it's straight and then we would have to get it in there. If the heel's down so low, then your foot's floating up in the air at your toes. Here you have super skinny but then gigantic here, and how in the world is this big a foot going to get in this little tiny opening? So those are a couple of like people who draw shoes really fast, and this is not correct, obviously. Also, when we're looking at our shoe, we want to look at the front of the shoe and the back of the shoe, and then where our halfway point is on our shoe. And doing that will help us tell where the opening part of our shoe would be. And even if you're wearing a boot, it's still do this measurement, but it will go up higher. So on this one, what the person had done was they did do the front and the back of the shoe and divided it in half, but look at how tiny the opening is for your foot. So you have to think, will my foot fit into this really long shoe this way? So that's why we need to look at where halfway is on our shoe. And then Also, they did include the eyelets of just a simple circle, but maybe it's where it's metal and it has two sides. If it's cloth, maybe it just does have the one. And then they just did simple lines of like, okay, this is how shoestrings go. If you really look at the shoestring, like I said earlier, it does have two sides too, even if it's a skinny, more cylinder type shoestring. This would still be incorrect of where they're like, okay, I got the thickness, and then they just leave the eyelet of the shoe. Or everything's going through here and not up and over the shoe. So you have to see, is it underneath? Is it over? Which way are my laces going? And then down here, what I've done is a correct one, but as you can see, some of the pencil lines I've started with is I lightly mark with little X's going over, and then you can see where it goes in and out of the shoe. And then what I like doing is when I'm looking at these, I count how many of the eyelets that are in the shoe. So this has 6, so I know down here I'm going to draw one, and I would then draw the other one up here. Find where halfway is in between, so then I know I have 2 here and 2 here. That way I'm not getting like 7 on one side and then only 2 on the other, unless that's what you're seeing, but we still want to make sure that it's done straight across from each other. And then if you have some on the side, if you have a heel, pay attention to where it is and which angle of the heel it is. So like some high heels or boots are perfectly straight down and some are more angled that way, so pay attention to that way. And if we've worn our shoe a lot, sometimes the toe of the shoe goes upwards, so we want to make a note of that too when we're drawing it. Is it something that's tilted up this way, or is it a newer shoe where it's flat still? So those are things to think of when we're drawing our shoe, especially the laces, because that's what makes a shoe, when you're looking at it, not look realistic at all, because you're just like, oh yeah, that's a good detail of a shoe, but they don't know what they're doing with the shoestrings. And that's where some people give up, and that's the main detail that people will notice first, is are the laces going through correctly. So when doing the shoe, like I've started here, you could make a couple of guidelines when you're doing it in your drawing. Some people can freehand it and start out with the contour part, and then you go back in and mark your shoestring holes. So what I was going to do is set this over here, and I'm going to just do where I'm looking down on it also and try and fit it into this position. And I'm just going to do a rough sketch of it so you guys can see, but what I'm going to do is find where my front and back of my shoe are when I'm looking down on it. So here, and I'm going to make it smaller than what this one is actually. So here would be a mark for the back. Then I could do a mark for the front and then find halfway. So I know the opening of this shoe is going to be all the way over here. So I could give myself a light line of where the shoe would be placed. And then you can start. And I'm seeing it from an angle a little bit where you're seeing it straight down. So I'm going to try and do the straight down from my point of view here. So I'm seeing a curve for the bottom of it more than I am the top. And then I do see this more. And I'm just going to lightly sketch things in, and then I can go back, so making a note of where halfway is. So this is coming up and then over a little bit for me. And then I do see the toes coming around. And I'm going to do these light sketches and then go back and make my nice details. So I had this part was coming up, and once again I'm going to look at where the half was. So this was coming up here, and then this one, and I'm following through with my eye going around to this area, and this one's coming down this way, and then I have a slight curve for the toe part of the shoe. And I do have more of this that needs drawn. And these, I'm just doing sketches right now, and then I will go back and put in more of the details. And then we would draw the tongue of the shoe, and I'm seeing the inside part of the shoe here. And when we learn how to shade, then this will also make the shoe a little more realistic when we're looking at it. I'm going to look at this, so I'm going to make a mark slight here, a little mark here, and then I know I need I'm seeing them at different angles also. And you have to think of which part's getting covered up with a shoestring. And then you would continue. So what I was talking about was placement here. And then you draw a light line like this. And I do see this one's going up and then back over. And then I have all this. So you just keep drawing them out, but once you have this, then draw the thickness of the shoestring. And then I would go back and draw this. And there is the bow that's covering it all. And then you would continue, and then don't forget you would have these parts. And I'm just gonna stop here, but just so you guys get the point of how you would start drawing the shoes. So this lace here goes underneath and then goes over to here in the underneath and comes back up and over. So this would be how you would start your shoe. And if you want to put all the little details in, you can. Of all the stitches here, I didn't do all the stitch marks. You can if you want to, and I didn't add in this textured part here, which looks like it's about in this area if I was continuing drawing them. And then I would have went through here with the black part. And just keep going. So remember laces, how they loop back and forth. And when you have a pencil, you could erase it and make your nice little details over here. And in this one, I was looking straight down on the shoe when I was drawing it, so you can see how the laces I have going back and forth again. Thank you for watching.